Hey guys, this is Gatsby with Tape, and today you join me for episode 2 of Fall of Kerbin, and you join me with the USS Centauri, gaining ground on the the Penguin's cruiser, the Cruolan cruiser, of course. And we are going to take this down, but it is attempting to steal the island chain, to secure the island chain. But we need that, we need the gates of hell, because we must enter the hellish Cruolan nation and destroy them. But anyway, we do get a little closer, and it turns out the firing range is about 5 kilometers. Now, I'm going to be firing with guard mode. I would like to be aiming myself because it's more fun, but whenever I did try and whenever I tried to aim from a little while away, it pretty much skies every shot, like massively, so I couldn't get any accurate shots, pretty much. So I'm just going to use guard mode, because in testing it has shown that this is ineffective for me to use, which also means I can't use that back gun, which is a shame, so I will be slightly less gunned than I thought. But we are entering range now, and you will notice that I will be firing 6 shells, and I have a much higher rate of fire than Penguin. His guns are probably turning right now. KUS Joire, of course. We will be lighting it up pretty soon, and you can see it's getting its first shots away with its many guns, but mine are just far more frequent. You can see this, and we've had our first few hits just tearing this apart. Its shots aren't even getting close to me right now, and they're coming very infrequently. I am just pounding it with the 6 frontal guns, and it just... oh, that's not great. But we do get a couple of shots coming in, and they strike us right in the front. That's nice as well, because we're moving and forward. We're a much harder target. And also the front is made to take impact. So you can see we get hit again. And if you do get a look at that panel at some point, it does start to heat up quite seriously. I start to turn a little because I'm a little worried that this is going to smash off my front and I'm going to start taking in water. But you can see it's starting, the Joire is just falling apart now. We've caused some serious damage. But it is still taking shots, and you can see it's seriously heating up that front panel. It's gotten to go quite red, and if that happens, then we're going to start to kind of pitch forward and start to sink. But it appears the firing has abated, and the enemy is destroyed. And when I do attempt to get a few shots off myself, because guard mode is merciful, I am not. When I do try, and you can see that it just skies the shot and nothing works. But I get a little look there, and it looks like it's tipping over, and is definitely stopped firing. So I switch to it just to see what's going on so we can get a good shot before I sink it. And it has started to sink. I've destroyed the bridge. It looks like I've destroyed the internals through that panel, and it has started to roll over. But yes, again, no matter what I seem to try, I can't get an accurate shot from far away. It just skies every shot. It thinks I'm shooting across the world, apparently, which is just not fantastic, which is a small flaw of this ship, but that's fine. We won the battle. We took no damage. Penguins, oh, he's a bigger target. That just means I'm harder to sink. But anyway, I get in a little closer, and my shots are still being skied. But eventually, I can start taking some shots. My guns are nice to me for once, and I start just drifting by the ship, letting up with these gigantic 6 cannons, 8-inch barrel, 8-inch shells, just smashing this ship apart. But yes, we will be securing this southern island chain, and we will be building bridges, and we will take it over, and we'll have a second route into Cruola, which will be fantastic. But we are going to shoot this until it sinks, which does take a while, and you'll see all of that. I guess at this point I probably could be using that back gun, but now I'm sure Penguin will retaliate. Obviously his cruiser is just far too terrible to do anything to me. Oh, you can see it's really starting to roll over now. In fact, it might just flip right over. So I assume he's going to launch a battleship of some kind, or maybe just a much larger cruiser, something more like mine. You can see mine is, you can kind of almost get the sense that mine is much bigger. But yes, this is the nice thing about the World War II warships mod, is the ships actually sink. Yes, and because I've only destroyed one side, this is gonna capsize, which is just fantastic. And you can see my cruiser lurking in the background there rather beautifully. But as this is engulfed by the water, our Kerbals know they have won the day. The day is ours, and so soon the island chains. Now, it'll take Penguin a little while to get down here, so I can start securing this island chain quite soon, which is really good, because then I'm going to have it. But I assume Penguin will be sending some force down here soon, so we better quit our grinning, drop our linens, and send a few things down here. But anyway, we have troubles elsewhere, elsewhere in the north at Valley's Guard, and, well, we're sending out an attacker to go and inspect Penguin's, well, the Cruolan tanks on the border of our territory, which is exactly where we don't want them. This is carrying 4 250-pound bombs to hopefully soften up one or two of them. And it will just fly on out there by itself. I could send out a bunch of attackers with a lot of bombs, but I have my attackers, my plane launches this turn earmarked for something else. This is my planes from last turn, but the planes I'm launching this turn are earmarked for a different thing. Now, yeah, you can see they're all at this at the pass where they destroyed my tanks, which they did last episode. They stripped them apart quite nicely because they're quite wide tank. My tanks were quite small and compact, and apparently that makes them easy to destroy. But yeah, we're going to try and soften them up because we are going to have to go in with tanks again. So I wanted to try and, well, firstly, sort of inspect them, and secondly, kind of soften them up. So here we are just passing over this nice little mountain about 25 kilometers away. And this is a very fast vehicle. You can see it's traveling at 130 meters per second, which is insane for a World War I biplane. That's ridiculous. I think that may be somewhere near 300 miles an hour. But this is Kerbal Space Program. Anyway, we start to come into range, and we're lining up our shot nicely at a flak range, which is good because they have some pretty powerful cannons on there. And I'm just going to release my bombs. There's a little bit of burning on there, which is just the bombs scraping against the bottom of my plane, which is intensely worrying. But yeah, it's ultimately fine. It wasn't real damage. It was just the particle effects being a little confused. And you can see they're opening up their flak cannons on these bombs, which is rather annoying. It means that they do shoot down a majority of them because there's 3 flak cannons and one of them's very big. And yeah, one bomb falls, but it doesn't get anywhere near, so that was a bit of a shame. Bit of a fail. I didn't do any damage, so my tanks are going to have to be very brave. But they are heartened by the knowledge that our cruiser has scored its first victory. I do attempt to fire my turret at it, but I'm about 5 kilometers away when I can finally score an angle, and then I stall. So that's not super great. I actually don't stall, I just kind of side slip. But yeah, so this attacker was fairly useless. It was nice to fly it out, get a good bombing run in, I guess, but, you know, just a bit of a training mission and a scouting mission, I guess. I'm just going to have a real quick sip of water, because I've been talking for a while already. But yeah, we land this nicely on the runway next to the Sparrowhawk ones, where it will be nicely protected at Valley's Guard, of course, our northern base, where a lot of tactical missions are launched from these days, it would appear. And yeah, we'll just bring it to a nice bumpy stop. So, those tanks need to be stopped. And how do you stop a tank? With a nuke. But I don't have any nukes. So we're going to stop a tank with some tanks. Now, Penguin was explaining the minutiae of why my tanks lost, because they're, you know, smaller and more compact. I think it was because their guns weren't big enough. I think that's the real reason. So I put some bigger guns on my existing tanks, and we're going to go out there and we're going to tear them apart. Anyway, after a lot of driving and totally not vessel maneuvering, we get within 10 kilometers, but there seems to be a bunch of ridges, so I don't think the engagement will start until we're very close by. I know our engagement with Penguin in his turn didn't start until very close range. And the problem is with Burn Together is the tanks following you start to squirrel a lot, as you can see, so I had to keep stopping and closing formation because they kept losing ground on me, which was very annoying. Have a little more water. But yeah, eventually I get them kind of going in the right direction, and unexpectedly, here where I didn't think I was in range, one of my tanks starts opening fire on one of the SM-1s, which is Penguin's tank. And yeah, it seems to be doing some pretty serious damage. There was an explosion there on my tank, but Penguin's SM1 seems to fall apart quite quickly. Just to, you know, be super honest, his tanks are damaged, so I do have an advantage in that way. Annoyingly, neither of my other tanks were firing, and I by the time I'd gotten my gun out and not on guard mode, the other tank was dead. You can see it in a pile of smoke over there, and I couldn't really do anything. So that's a bit of a shame. But yeah, it's nice that we took out one early and took minimal damage on the other tank. I did check, and it was pretty much just a wheel arch that got knocked off on mine, which is quite nice. Those wheel arches are good armor, really. But yeah, you can see it's fine, just losing the front wheel arch, which could leave it exposed. But yeah, to the rest of the tanks, we actually make it up this ridge to about 800, well, more like 750 meters away before we actually engage, because it's such kind of rolling ground that we could pretty much use ridges for cover until we're right up close, because we just have these big guns. I know some of his tanks have the smaller ones. I'm not sure which one we took out, but annoyingly, the tank stopped firing at the already destroyed tank. Luckily, mine does divert its aim after a while, because those are going to be far more of a problem. But the already destroyed tank starts returning fire, which is a bit of a shame. It appears I've taken out one of the tanks quite nicely, but the central tank has totally destroyed that other tank on my right, the tank on my right flank. You can see bits of it rolling past now if you look real hard. And I stop so that Burn Together doesn't freak out, but I get destroyed and do a flip, which is pretty insane. So it's now 1-on-1. 2 dead tanks on Penguin's side and 2 dead on my side. So I'm just rolling in now, but it appears in my last breaths with my other tank, I seem to have caused some serious damage to that to the Cruolan tank on the ridge. So it's looking pretty good. Now, annoyingly, my tank doesn't stop moving. I can't control this now. I can use the gun, but I can't drive it because it still thinks it's following some mystery. It still thinks it's following some mystery other tank. So it's just driving by itself. You can see back there how destroyed my tanks were. But anyway, when I come up this ridge, I see Penguin's tank still in relatively good shape, and I start letting up on him because I am not taking any chances. It doesn't appear to be firing, but I'm just firing straight away as I come over the ridge. And when I finally get above here, you can see I get some good shots in, and it tears the tank apart. Just huge explosions, and everything is ruined. And you can see there's a little bit of another tank left, so I'm just going to swivel around to destroy that. I can't stop because I have no control over these wheels currently, so I'm just going to use Vessel Parker to put it in place. Annoyingly, it does seem to cause some horrific lag, so we can't inspect the battlefield that well. But basically, all of Penguin's tanks are in total ruins, and so are the other 2 of mine. You did get a shot of them earlier, of them just kind of lying on the ground in bits. But yeah, I simply can't stop this without using park mode. So yes, this is parked and guarding, which is probably not ideal because it's all glitched out, but Penguin won't reach this tank next turn. Believe you me. But yes, very successful engagement, well, semi-successful engagement. We lost a bunch of tanks, but we only lost 2. But anyway, Penguin has launched more tanks. In his last turn, he put 2 heavy tanks and a bunch of fighters and attacker at his forward operating base, and that means he can quite easily smash through my single tank. So we're going to go destroy that. We're here at Osiris Fortress, my base that is the fortress for Osiris Bay, which is one of my cities, taking off with 3 Sparrowhawk 2s and 1 Peregrine 1, I want to call this. Yeah, that's what it's called. Now, the Sparrowhawk 2s are basically just much lighter and smaller versions of the Sparrowhawk 1s, which are much more adept fighters, which I will be pretty much the backbone of my fleet right now. And I'm using the BD Armory Wingman to fly them out over the ocean to Penguin's forward operating base. It may have been a shorter distance to go from Valley's Guard, but that is currently full of planes, so I decided to go from my medium naval base, rather beautiful place up here in the north, all the way up to, well, to the Captains, I guess. I think that's Penguin's planes, but those are that's his forward operating base that he set up with a supply vehicle, which isn't technically a base, but it's a nice runway and a good base of operations. And the main problem is he has a couple of tanks there. But anyway, I do get a few nice shots of me flying in formation. BD Wingman is incredible. I mean, look how close this formation is. This is just the computer figuring out what it needs to do, which allowed me to quite easily fly all the way over the ocean. I couldn't fly maximum speed because the fighters seem to be slower than the attacker currently, which kind of sucks, but that's just the nature of the engines we're using, because we have some pretty strict rules on engines, so you can't go too crazy. But eventually, we do get over the ocean to this, to the pass below the mountains, and eventually we get into range. Now, I'm not going to release my fighters until Penguin's fighters start taking off, or have taken off, because I want it to be fair, and I want him to, treat me with the same niceties. But basically the plan for this is my attacker, and the 3 fighters are my fighter escort. Now I'm just going to release those fighters now because I think they're releasing now because the captains appear to be taking off and moving very quickly. But that is my fighter escort to buy me enough time to drop my bombs on the PT-1s. Now these are Penguin's heavy tanks, which really need to be taken out because they're 3-inch gun carriers, and that's a real problem. But yes, so hopefully those fighters will buy me enough time to drop these bombs, and we're just coming into range now with 4 250-pound bombs. I hit the wrong button, and I switch weapon rather than dropping. You can see a hail of gunfire below me from my fighters. It doesn't seem to be scoring any hits right now. But yeah, I seem to just be unable to press the right button. But eventually I start going into a dive so that I can drop my bombs, and seems like I might be getting some away, but it's honestly hard to tell. There are flames at the back of me. I think that's just from dropping bombs. And it seems like I did get a few away, but I'm just having huge trouble remembering the buttons, because I've actually set up the action groups the wrong way around from what I usually do. But it appears I've got 2 bombs away, which is quite nice. And I have 2 left, so I'm going to try and drop one there. Terrible shot. What were you thinking, Peter? Yes, both of the bombs fall very kind of past it, not particularly near it, and they're small bombs, so they're not going to do much. And the 250-pound bomb goes also slightly closer, but not really anywhere near it. And you can see the fighters starting to engage over there. My Sparrowhawk's under fire from the Tetrids because they are triplanes, highly maneuverable, but much slower than my Sparrowhawks. But yeah, they seem to be exchanging blows. But I do have 1 bomb left, and while they're fighting, I decide it is time that I drop this bomb and score a kill, because we must take out at least one of these tanks. And I drop the bomb with what looks like a perfect shot. Throttle up the engine to pull out and hopefully not get nailed by the tank cannon. It looks like something has been hit over there in the combat. And as we watch this fall in, this is one of the most perfect shots I have ever seen from a dumb bomb. It strikes right across, and it would appear that that is dead. So it is now time for me to join the fight. We'll deal with the PT-1 with the other PT-1 later. But it appears we have taken out one, which was our primary objective. It would appear that all 3 of our Sparrowhawks are still in the air, along with all 3 of Penguin's Tetrids and his Captain, which is an attacker. His Tetrids are triplanes, which should be pretty slow, but very maneuverable. And I do try and take a few pot shots with my attacker, even though it's not particularly maneuverable. But the only kill I ended up getting with the attacker was actually kind of an interesting one. As you see here, I'm flying towards this Tetrid, and it starts getting very close, and then there's an explosion. I hit it. I hit a plane with my plane. It took off my whole right wing, and I tumbled towards the ground. But I do just manage to see the enemy plane also tumbling towards the ground, which makes me very happy because, well, an eye for an eye, I guess. And you can see it's actually in pretty good shape, which worried me a lot because it has all of its wings. And it looks like it's going to correct itself, and I just wanted to watch this all the way down. And you can see that it looks as if it's almost going to land. But then it swerves, power slides, flips, and slams into the ground. You can see that I knocked it off balance so much that it did indeed crash. So I have taken down my first Tetrid. Then after this, I just basically watched the fighters on guard mode for a while, just trying to fight themselves. But the guard mode seems pretty useless. I mean, I think my fighters on the AI pilot and guard mode did nip off a couple of the Tetrid's wings, but they're still flying, and that's. I think I only managed to do it because I have the heightened speed advantage, and now they have the maneuverability advantage. And you can see this is trying to run away, but it just can't seem to get out of range, and another Sparrowhawk dives to try and take out this Tetrad, but it just can't turn fast enough, and the Tetrad escapes, and the Sparrowhawk gives up. Which was quite frustrating, because my fighters just don't seem to be able to turn, or don't want to turn. I'm blaming the guard mode for this. Don't worry, I do change over to it myself in a bit. But this does eventually evade, and quite nicely. And when we're flying past, the Captain is actually being a bit of a bugger with its turret, getting a few shots on this plane, but nothing major. And yeah. And then we do get a nice shot of a triplane missing a wing, trying to shoot down one of my Sparrowhawks. Just missing, but rather beautiful shot there. But eventually, I do indeed take over the command. I take over the controls, and at first, I'm just trying to get my my bearings, see if I can get some shots off, trying to chase down the Captain, because it's a much bigger plane. Although I think my planes are the smallest, which is quite nice, because they carry very little fuel, because these are highly efficient engines, which is rather nice. And I just start letting up on this this Captain. I'm not getting any shots on because I'm still kind of tuning myself to fighting at this point. And I prefer flying from in the cockpit, actually. It's kind of it's just easier. It's a nicer camera, I guess. It gives you poor visibility. But eventually bullets start raining down on top of me, and I get a little scared and run away. But eventually, I start racking up the kills. There's a triplane here, and I'm opening fire. You can't see it particularly well from in the cockpit because the things aren't working. But that was indeed my shot, and you can see it smoking and falling crazily towards the ground. I just want to follow this to the ground to make sure it dies, because the pilot is really fighting this, but it just can't stop it rolling over at this point. I mean, look at that. It's going in sideways. But when it does touch the ground, it seems to bounce up. But it still rolled over too much to do anything. And I have to kind of start avoiding this other Tetrad, so I start pulling out, and we do eventually see that Tetrad I just shot down slam into the ground, dead as a doornail, and I missed that one that flies right in front of me, rather depressingly. But eventually, after probably about 10 minutes of chasing it, I do indeed finally get some shots on target, and you can see it explode there. Gloriously, you can see smoke billowing out of it, flames out of the engine, and just watch it tumble towards the ground. It appears I may have even just wing fragments flying everywhere as this tumbles toward the ground. This was actually a very long dogfight, which I kind of had to cut down because it was very, very boring, because I was a terrible shot. And all that is left is the Captain, and eventually, after switching planes, I catch up with it and just start opening fire. So yes, all of the kills today have been scored by yours truly, except no, even my plane that went down was killed. But yes, that is 3 Tetrads taken down, and now a Captain. You can see smoke billowing out of it after my shots. That is the problem with the cockpits. You can't really see the gun firing, but it does slam into the ground quite nicely. Now we have to deal with the remaining PT-1, which is going to be a little bit of trouble. My idea for this was I'd drive right up to it and shoot it, because I only have a 30 caliber machine gun. I don't think I can accurately shoot it from the air for long enough to do any damage. So I'm going to drive up to the side of it and just shoot the shit out of it. So you can see I've actually had a pot shot from the back, but I somehow lost that footage. But I ended up coming in from the side and just kind of firing my machine guns. I have to be right up against it because my gun angle is quite high, so it would mostly miss unless I'm right up against it. But the problem here is the gun angle is so high that I'm only getting the top, which isn't fantastic because that's just a bit of armor which is only protecting the gun, which is a pretty durable piece of kit anyway. And I can't go in front of it because there's a gun there. Basically, the nice thing about this is it only has about a 40-degree yaw range, so it can't shoot me when I'm besides or in front of it. And Penguin just put his machine gun in the front, so that's fine. I do some pretty serious damage, but I don't deem that to be enough. So I drive much faster to ramming speed, brake hard so that I flip forward and can drag my machine gun across the cockpit, destroying the tank. This was a pretty makeshift way of killing this tank, but it is finally dead. That took quite a long time as well, so I was like, oh my god, after it. And there was also a triplane which looks in rather good shape, so I took another plane out there, drove up to it, and just cleaned up the debris. So yes, those final 2 kills, not as glorious as my air kills, but that was the easiest way of doing it. I'm sure that'll annoy Penguin no end. The Corolans will be raging. But anyway, after destroying this, it appears there's nothing left at this forward operating base, and it is mine. So yes, what a successful day, the destruction of 2 tanks, By the way, the tank that I did destroy, I didn't get a great shot of it here, but it looks as if the bomb landed smack bang in the middle of the tank. But yes, after destroying the cockpit to make sure there's no resurgence, bit of a murder there now I think about it, but shit happens. We put our planes on the runway. And the day is ours, boys. We have taken down all of the planes, we have destroyed the tanks, sort of one of them a little bit shittily, but whatever, we got a great bomb shot on the other one. But yes. Anyway, all that is left today is deploying the rest of our navy, and a few other things. That's not true, this isn't all that's left. But I'm deploying some destroyers today, and I thought I'd just show you it next to my cruiser to give you a sense of scale of how small this is. But yes, this is a Dagger-class destroyer. You know, continuing the naming scheme involving blades. And this is the USS Liberty, which will be going down to the island chain to help the USS Centauri guard from Creolan ships. Now, this carries 4 5-inch guns, and it also carries a flak cannon on top, depth charges for hunting submarines, and a torpedo launcher for shooting down battleships. I'm also deploying 2 more of these in the bay to help the USS Sierra? Yeah, USS Sierra defend from attack if our home comes under attack. Again, just with the 2 5-inch guns, which you can see quite well now, and the depth charges on the side, the flak cannon, and of course the torpedo launcher at the back, which could be very good for taking down some of the bigger ships. These will bolster our fleet a little and will give us some diversity for submarine hunting and sinking some ships with torpedoes. And here again is the USS Sierra, just so you can remember what it looks like. And here is the USS Mercury, the other Dagger class. I've forgotten what the third the third Dagger was called, but anyway. Yes, we have a bit of a line now of defensive ships, which is rather nice. And when the supply vessel from last turn, advances down, it passes the USS Liberty on its way past, waving, being rather happy that there are more ships coming to defend us. This is bound, hopefully, to refuel the USS Centauri next turn, which will be rather nice. And talking of supply vehicles, we need to deploy another one. This is heading down the valleys, down out of Valley Scarred into the north to hopefully resupply my planes. And we are just sending out yet another supply vessel down to the island chain. So there are now 2 heading down there. And when we zoom out, you'll be able to see that we have some impunity, a huge chain of supplies heading down to the islands. 4 ships with Penguin's single supply ship, so we will definitely own these islands. And finally today, we're just deploying another supply vehicle to head down to the island chain because we need to start setting up some bridges to get across. So yes, we are really pushing for the islands. We've destroyed Penguin in the north. We've just destroyed his first cruiser. And I know there's been just pretty much, I tried to cut all of the downtime out of this video to keep it sort of short and very exciting. And we've done a lot this episode, and I hope you have enjoyed it because, well, it took a long time to record with all the shooting of planes and tanks and ships, and it was a huge amount of fun. But I hope you've enjoyed this, and I hope you will come back for future episodes. And if you did enjoy this video, maybe you'd like to go check out a couple more videos. There is my latest devlog of a game I'm working on, which is super early, so don't judge it too much, but I'm just kind of showing it off early so I can get feedback and things, and just because I like talking about that sort of stuff. And there is also my KSP career mode, which I'm still doing, Road to Exploration, in which, in the last episode, we do some moon-basey things and test out a new rocket. There's also links to my Twitter, Twitch, and Patreon in the description if you feel like clicking on any of those. But if not, just hope you've enjoyed the video, and I will see you next time.